Hello, I'm Bonnie Langford, and this is The Sirens of Audio.
Coming up in this episode, our featured guest is regular Big Finish guest actor Tim Bentinck, also known for his long-running role in The Archers. We'll also be talking about the recent controversy Philip has stirred up online for giving, get this, a positive review. Our rabbit hole topic is going to be live and interactive with the audience of our May Sophie Aldred event in Sydney, and we'll be recommending a recent Big Finish release and a music album that we were inspired to listen to again as a result of yet another recent Big Finish release. Hold on to your socks and hose and pull. You're in for an awesome show. G'day audiophiles, this is The Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who on audio. My name's Dwayne.
And my name's Philip. G'day Dwayne, g'day audiophiles.
G'day Philip. Before we started recording, you're in a bit of a silly mood. Are you still silly? What can we expect from you today?
Well, I don't know, maybe I should be more sensible now, but yes, I don't want me to sleep.
No, don't do that. I'll tell you one thing though, you have been causing a bit of a stir on various Big Finish groups. We've talked recently about, well, it's interesting because we've been talking about reviews and how they might affect a person's listening experience, and your review of Dalek's Genesis of Terror, the Big Finish Lost Story production, is quite a polarizing release. It seems to, some people hate it and some people have gone, oh, I think I might enjoy that if you put it that way. So some people seem to be being swayed by your opinions, which of course, as we all know, they're always right, Philip.
Well, always. But can I say, the background to that is the fact that I wasn't planning to review it at all. It was just that someone put up a poll of the worst Big Finish stories ever, naming that as number one. And so that sort of bothered me in terms of, I don't like this anyway, and we all know Necromantia is the worst one ever. There's nothing like that.
That will never get beaten.
That will never get beaten. Yes. So sorry, if anyone does like Necromantia, I'm sorry, but I don't think you really do, because it's just, yeah. Anyhow, we some stage we might talk about Necromantia, but it's just, you know me, I don't like being negative, but for that one, is just sort of, anyhow. So that one came up, this person just doing the most hated Big Finishes. So the whole concept of the question I didn't like, people just coming up with what they didn't like, because I'm all about being positive. Yes. And so I simply added a comment to this one in terms of, and also I think in the top 10 was the Pirates. And so to me that just showed, okay, well, if you think the Pirates is one of the top 10 of the worst Big Finishes of all time, then you obviously have no idea what you're talking about. And I just gave a bit of a defense for, what's it called? Genesis of Terror. So I just gave a bit of a defense for it. And in the process of writing the comment, it got longer than I expected. So I ended up just copying and pasting it as a bit of a review. And basically, all I was trying to say to people, I'm not saying it's the best thing that Big Finish have ever produced, not even close to it. But if you understand what it is good for, it serves its purpose really well. Which is, it's not a Big Finish story. It's what they have that Terry Nation had originally in terms of his first draft of what became the Genesis of the Daleks. And for someone like me, and no doubt lots of people, our listeners, I bought the LP of Genesis of the Daleks, and I listened to it for hundreds of times. I basically wore that poor record flat. And so I know every line, every bit of dialogue, and most of the first episode is actually on that record. There's a good 15, 20 minutes of that first episode there. So being able to compare that to what Terry Nation originally wrote was really fascinating. And as I said, it's got narration, but it's not narration, it's stage directions. And so Nicholas Briggs reads all the stage directions, and I really like how he reads the stage directions in a very, I don't say monotone is the wrong word, but in a unemotional voice. Just, these are the facts. This is what happened this is what happened here. And even from Sarah's point of view, slowly turned, and so all the stage directions for that first episode are all there, with the dialogue being, wonderfully played. So all I was doing was sort of saying, being able to compare that first episode to what I have in my head all the time with that record was a fascinating thing, to compare one to the other, where changes were made. I do think Genesis of the Daleks, Robert Holmes, I think he improved the dialogue. And I think everything that he's done is actually better. But then hearing the breakdown of every episode, just done, and that's only done as stage directions. It's just the summary breaks, points done by different actors who are in the cast. I think as a work of behind the scenes DVD commentary extra, it's a beautiful piece of work. But that being said, if you're expecting a proper Big Finish story, you're going to be disappointed. So I'm just trying to warn people, go in with the right expectation, and I think if you do that, you'll learn and enjoy it. But if you don't, you're going to be stuffed.
I was surprised at how many people were expressing their annoyance that this was advertised as a lost story, and it's not like the other lost stories, and I feel ripped off. And it got me confused, because right from the day it was announced that it was coming out, Big Finish have always said exactly what it was going to be, right from day one. I remember, I got the press release, I read the thing and was curious about it. And so it's never been a secret that this is what it was, but people were expressing their annoyance that this was suddenly like they were gazumped by it, it was a surprise, like it was, something Big Finish had gone out of their way to rip people off with, which was, annoying. They had never ever said that this was going to be a lost story like all the others.
No, I agree. I'd read the press release. I read the Big Finish articles. Vortex talked about it. It was on the Big Finish podcast. Everyone, I think, had explained what it was. But I do understand that some people had missed that. I do think the cover isn't helpful, because it's a stunning cover. I love the cover. But
it's a great cover, yeah.
It's a great cover, but the cover really doesn't signify the fact it is only one episode, one half-an-hour episode.
Yes.
Maybe for people who just hadn't... I can understand people might have missed it. And so I do feel sorry if people did miss it and were surprised, therefore, by it. So that's part of the reason why I did the review, was to warn people, if you're going to get it, just know what you're getting. And if you like that sort of DVD extra sort of stuff, you're going to love this. If you don't care about those DVD extra sort of stuff, it's going to be a waste of money for you. So that was the point. But yeah, it has caused a bit of a stir, and I do wish they were paying me for my reviews. That would be nice.
I was going to say that. You made sure you passed on your bank account details for Big Finish?
Well, apparently a couple of people assume I am being paid for it, which is lovely.
More than a couple.
Some people thought I must be Nick Briggs, who's actually just done it himself. So if I could actually write as well as Nick Briggs, I'd be happy with that too. So a few things happening there that I'm really happy about. It hasn't got too ugly, because certainly one of the things that I appreciate about most of the people who listen to the Science of Audio is I think most people who listen to us have a positive attitude towards the show, and we can talk respectfully and disagree, and I think that's okay. And I think it hasn't got totally beyond the respectful. I've been watching it nervously, wondering if it's going to move beyond the point. But at the moment, I think people could sometimes express themselves a bit more. I disagree with you in a nice way, as opposed to who's paying you. But that's okay. I can live with that.
Fair enough. All right, so we've got a great show lined up this episode. We're going to be speaking with the incredibly talented Tim Bentinck, who's a guest starred in many, many Big Finish episodes. But normally you and I just take a trip down the rabbit hole, Philip. But as a bit of a change, we recorded a rabbit hole topic at our Sophie Aldred event recently, with the audience taking part in that. Unfortunately, the audio didn't work out as planned. I do have an audio version which I'll attempt to clean up. It's not going to be as good as it normally is, but I would like to share that with you now. One of the features of our podcast is what we like to call a rabbit hole topic. And so it worked well last time when we were up here and we got some interaction from the audience. So we want to do that again. So let's jump down the rabbit hole. All right, so my question for you today, Philip, and for everyone here is, I mentioned the music of Murray Gold before, so I'm not going to stick purely to audio, but more to TV series today, because I'm interested in the music side of things. Now, when Sophie was in the series, there were different composers coming in for the various serials. What do you prefer, Philip? Do you prefer the consistency of someone like Murray Gold, or do you like the different variety of different composers coming in?
I'm a huge Murray Gold fan, and a lot of people whinge about him showing too much emotion, but the job of a good musician is always to give emotion. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think because Murray Gold is so good, I'd actually prefer him to the changing. I don't know. There's some good stuff in the past too. There's some really awful music though, isn't there? There's a few TV shows that just it'd be creepy at how awful the music is. Dudley Simpson was an amazing composer, and some of his shows are spectacular, and others just go, oh, he ain't really bothered at the time. So Dudley Simpson was probably the previous classic one. You know what? I don't care.
You don't care?
I don't care.
I love it all. Can I just give a shout out to Stephen Akinola too, because I've loved his music over the last few years too. It's been different, very different to Murray Gold, and I like it. So what do you think, members of the audience? What do you prefer? Do you prefer the consistency of a composer throughout a series, or do you like to chop and change?
Definitely the latter.
Just stick your hand up and we'll bring a microphone to you.
Just hold the microphone. No hand over microphone, that's my rule.
Okay. Well, I'll have to go with, which one of you said a mixture? Murray Gold is very good, but it would be interesting to see a variety of famous composers, what their view on Doctor Who is, plus it keeps things fresh.
Yeah, good point, Tim. Thank you.
I think you can have a happy medium. You can change composers every season rather than every story. So that way you get a consistent feel for a season, since also you see you doing season-long arcs and what have you. So you have
so you like the consistency, but you also like to mix it up a bit.
Yeah, because Murray Gold has done some good stuff, but I kind of died a little when they said he was coming back. But, it's just everything from the first arc he done. Same Doctor, same all that, and it would be nice just to add a new name to add.
Dallas?
Murray's good, but the problem is with Murray is that it's all the same. It's all lush, orchestrated. It doesn't, it really occasionally doesn't, well, less is better. And I think it's just too much. Whereas the latest, there's a lot less music, a lot more silence, and silence can be as equally as important to a program as music. Music can end up being, I can't hear what the dialogue's saying, or I missed that, or it's too telegraphed, you know. Oh, this is important because the music's already telling me it's important. I much prefer to make in that position rather than the musicians.
Yep.
Yes, I always think that the difference between Murray Gold and Stephen Akinola is that Stephen is more atmospheric when he does his musical scores, whereas Murray is more melodic. So anyone else have
a good runner there.
Hey guys. My comment really on the music was that I felt that the chopping and changing worked better for the classic series because of, Monster of the Week kind of thing. It was different every time, whereas a consistent composer for the new series works better simply because of, overarching stories and all that kind of thing. That's always been my feeling about it. I like the fact that Sylvester McCoy had multiple different music composers and David Tennant had one. I would like perhaps a guest composer come in, and then Murray Gold is very good, very bombastic. Like Dallas, I can't understand the dialogue. It's supposed to be incidental music, not the music score to Doctor Who, where I just can't understand what's being said on the screen. So maybe Murray Gold has perhaps got a big charisma, but perhaps lower it a little bit, and just reduce the music a little bit.
Okay, just two more. So one here, one over there.
Yeah, so about what you were saying about the whole music and everything like that, is that
I do love Murray Gold. Like Murray Gold, I would definitely put in my top 5 favorite composers. So I really do love his music. It's very like uplifting. It's, you know, he has some difference. He has these silent ones. He has these big triumphant ones, and you're like, yeah, kind of thing. But I don't mind change. I don't, especially with music, because you can pinpoint some good ones. Anyway, good instruments. The point is though, I feel like Seagon's one, like he was good, like don't get me wrong, he was good. Just, I didn't really have that feeling that I had with Murray Gold's music. He had some occasional good ones, but it just, I don't know, I just like didn't have that like, you know, connection like with the music as much as I did with Murray Gold. But as I said, I'm happy for change, like, you know, some interesting new music for whatever the scene is, but I feel like Seagon's was just like a bit of a hit and miss for me.
Brilliant, thanks.
I think it sort of depends on the format of the show. So like the classic series was serials, and it was sort of like mini seasons. And I think like the new show is a bit more like a single arc in the way it's structured. So I think it sort of depends on that. But yeah, I definitely love like season 4 of like Murray Gold's composing. And I think if any of the later seasons with like Matt Smith's era, it was going more, they had a lot more money to spend on the music, so they're able to go a lot bigger. So it'll be interesting to see like, what the music sounds like now with like the new Disney Plus money.
Yes, great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Make sure you do subscribe to the podcast because your comments are going to appear on a podcast very soon.
Can I say how good the Doctor Who fans can actually talk constructively without bagging something else? Because often we have a reputation for just attacking, and that was actually really positive and constructive. It was obvious that people disagree, but we didn't even attack anyone. So well done, everyone. What an exciting thing to be. Give yourselves a hand. Because let's face it, no one has opinions stronger than Doctor Who fans, but learning how to actually express them in ways that are constructive and helpful. Well done.
All right, so it was great to hear from our audience at the recent Sirens of Audio event. Stay tuned. There are more announcements. If this comes out, and there has been an announcement, that could have happened too, Philip. We sometimes
maybe, I hope so.
Get a bit out of timing with our releases. But, yeah, the topic was interesting on the subject of music. Timothy Bentinck is actually a musician too, so that'll be interesting to talk with him about. But before we bring Timothy on, let's play a trailer for the latest Big Finish release that he's been in, and that is Space 1999 Dragon's Domain.
From Big Finish Productions, Space 1999 Dragon's Domain.
Alpha, if you can hear me, this is crazy, but I think I've been caught in some sort of thunderstorm in space.
It's dead ahead of us. Looks like it's been sliced out of rock.
That's definitely the thing that docked with Ultra. And the dragon's in there.
Well, Alan, let's not jump to any conclusions.
What the hell are they? They don't look like missiles.
Open fire.
Computer's giving me a strange reading in local space. Can't put my finger on what it is.
It kills, devours. We don't know why or how, but the people of that planet cut it out of the ground and ejected it into space to get rid of it.
A word I translated on that map, identifying the line you crossed on your test flight in Ultra.
What's the word?
As near as I can translate it. Dragon.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
Well, it's my great pleasure to welcome regular Big Finish contributor and long-serving star of radio drama The Archers, Tim Bentinck. Welcome.
Hello, hi. I should say good day, as I am a Tasmanian-born, but haven't used that in anger since 70 years.
Well, I was going to ask you about that first because I was very excited to see that you were in fact born about 50 kilometres from where I am sitting right now in Tasmania.
Are you in Campbelltown?
I'm just north of Launceston, so
okay.
not too far from Campbelltown.
Okay.
So tell us the story behind your being born in Tasmania.
Okay, well, after the war, my father, who had a habit of putting his money where his mouth was, figured that there would probably be nuclear war with Russia. And he worked out that the last place on the planet to get the fallout from a nuclear conflict was Tasmania. So, which apparently, if you do that now, it is, you're in the safest place in the world if it comes to nuclear war. So he answered a call for a jackaroo. So jackaroo wanted for Tasmanian sheep station. And he answered the call and he got the job. Now, what his plan was to go out there and work as a jackaroo for a bit and then to look around and buy somewhere to buy a sheep station, essentially, or a farm, be a farmer in Tassie, with my mother's parents' money, because my father was a kind of a flighty aristocrat with he had a title, but he hadn't got any money. And mum's family was they were kind of working class, then middle class, new money from Sheffield, they were Yorkshire, and they had a bit of brass, and they decided that they were going to write out a marriage settlement, which was a legally signed document, which my father didn't read. And it was only when he got to Tasmania, he discovered that this marriage settlement, which would allow him to buy property with my mum's money, only allowed him to buy property within the United Kingdom. He hadn't read that bit, because that's typical for my father. So he got to Tassie, and there he was, a jackaroo in a Tasmanian sheep station, Count Henry Bentinck. And he'd taken everything. He'd taken all the, the family stuff, the furniture, a few paintings, everything, and 2 daughters with him. And we'd landed on a sheep station called Barton, which is just like 20 miles north of Campbelltown. And he lived there. They lived there for something like, I think, three or 4 years. In meantime, I was born in 1953, and so that's why I've now got dual nationality. And if I'd stayed there, I'd be speaking the same way as you, mate. And I'd be supporting a different rugby team. But I'm not, and I am terribly English. Although a 50% Yorkshire, so I'm a bit of a mongrel. And then, I think I'd never really kind of worked. I think my mum just got bored. There she was, in the middle of nowhere. We just sheep for company. And my father he loved talking, he loved writing, and again, just the lack of people to talk to. I think that was really the main reason for them coming back. But they were £10 poms, in the first place. They were on SS Chitral. And weirdly, I'd just been doing a bit of work on, there's a television series called £10 Poms. I don't know if you've got it there yet, have you?
We do, yes. Yeah. My parents were £10 Poms too, so I watched
really?
the show.
Oh, cool. Okay. So that's essentially the story of her. And the nice thing is, because I've got dual nationality, both my boys have got dual nationality as well, and they've both used it. Both boys have been out to Aussie. And one travelling and one doing a bit of work there.
And have you had a chance to get back to Tassie to see the place where you were born?
I did. Many years ago, when I was probably in my late 40s, I think, I did a commercial for the Australian Tourist Board, which involved us for about 4 weeks. It was the best job in the world. We were traveling, we just flown all the way around Australia. We were filmed in front of every single photogenic part of Australia that you can imagine. We did something like 26 flights all around the place. And it was shown on TV and on film. And it was, it was one of those nice jobs. I got paid well. And at the end of it, I said, right, I'm going, we were in Sydney, so I just got a flight to Launceston. And it was very, very emotional. I remember as the plane came into land, I was, looking out the window. I was in bits. I was pathetic. I was just blubbing away because my mum died when I was 13. She took her own life when I was 13. So for me, it was mum. I was kind of coming back to, in a way, to her and the memories. We've got these photographs. We've got a lot of black and white photographs of Barton, and of her and of me being a baby and all that kind of a thing. And there I was suddenly, this place that for me in my memory was just these black and white photographs and stories from my sisters and from my parents. that it could have just as easily been, the moon. It was so far away. So to come there was enormously emotional. And so I landed there and I hired a car and I drove up to the northeast around the top and then came down to Hobart and down to Campbelltown. And it was a funny story was I found the hospital where I was born in Campbelltown Hospital. And I walked in there and walked up to the desk and the woman looked up and she said, "Oh, are you Tim Bentinck?" I thought, man, I made an impression, so, all those years ago, and made such an impression that you remember that. Anyway, it turned out that she was the wife of the person that I'd arranged to go and stay with, who they were related to the people who lived at the farm at Barton. So I'd made arrangements to go and stay with them. So, but I didn't know that, so I was sort of surprised. And I said, can you show me the place, whereabouts I was actually born? And she looked out the window and she said, "You see that red Datsun over there? You'd have been born just about underneath that." That's the old maternity ward. And I got my birth certificate, which I'd never had. I'd never known, the time of day that I was born. I'd never had a birth certificate. So I got that. And so that was lovely. And then later, just like, I don't know, about 8 years ago, I got this gig of writing travel pieces for the Mail on Sunday. And Judy and I, my wife and I, have had these fantastic trips all around the world. Where they pay for you, and it's first class everything, and in return you get to you write an article for the paper, and it's such a bugger because the guy who's the editor, he got the sack a couple of years ago, so that's the end of that gig. But that was a great gig, that was fantastic, and we flew literally first class into Hobart, and then we hired a car, and then we drove all the way around Tassie. We went north up to Launceston, and then we went into the impenetrable scrub in the west and drove down there, which was, probably the most peaceful and beautiful place we have ever been in our lives. Absolutely. I talk about falling in love with the place that you were born in, and also because of this gig, not just being a tourist, but actually getting to really, really see the island, and to meet the people who I was blown over by. You kind of sort of have a feel of a kind of an image of Tasmania as being a little bit backwards, a little bit kind of, behind, a little bit insular. But no, these are the most charming, well-educated, funny, and the food was just to die for. The wine was to die for. I was blown away. And we really seriously thinking, maybe we made a mistake when we came back here. Maybe we should have stayed, and should we do what my dad did and go out there and stay? So I love it.
You wrote a fantastic article for the Mail on that called "Return of the Laddie from Tassie." I'll put a link for that in the show notes because I really enjoyed reading that. Yeah. And you mentioned when you're in Campbelltown, you ate the best hamburger you've ever had at a place called Zepp's, which is a place I always try and stop whenever I'm passing through, because I think they do some of the best food, great pizzas, and they've got the best chips ever.
Absolutely true. I remember it to this day. I'm going to go, this is the best hamburger I have ever eaten, and it's not been beaten since.
Can I just ask, what was the commercial you were making? Who was the commercial for? Was it Australia?
It was for the Australian Tourist Board.
For which country? For us to show?
To be shown. I think well, it was shown here. It was shown in the UK, but whether or not it was shown anywhere else, I can't tell you. I don't know.
They were in a land that time had forgotten.
I wish Paul could have seen this.
Isn't it beautiful?
A place like nowhere on Earth.
Keep heading west, about 600 k's, I guess. Got plenty of water?
Yeah.
What they saw, they would remember for the rest of their lives. And nothing would ever be the same again. But time would always be against them.
How much longer have we got?
Only 4 more days.
I just don't want to go back.
The Australian Tourist Commission, in association with Qantas Airways, present Australia. It has to be seen to be believed. Now showing.
What year was this? Because I really think I know the commercial.
It would have been something like, it would have been in the late 90s. I'll find out. I'll find out for you. Yeah, sort of late 90s, sometime like that. It was me and a girl, and it was just us being filmed doing all the lovely things that you can do in Australia. So, and it would have been, I mean, they filmed and filmed and filmed. I mean, you could have made a movie out of it, but the nature of the beast is, because it was a commercial, it had to be cut down to like at the most in the cinemas, it was like a minute. And on the TV it was probably just a 30 or 15 seconder, so all of that stuff went out the window. But we had a great adventure, and it's my first ever experience of having Christmas in the sun, lying by the pool with the dingle bells going is, for us, completely weird. It's so weird.
It will be.
Yeah.
Now, if anyone was to do a Wikipedia search for your name, your full name would come up, and that is Timothy Charles Robert Noel Bentinck, 12th Earl of Portland, Count Bentinck. What's the story behind that?
Okay, so briefly, in 1689 was the Glorious Revolution, when William of Orange, basically invaded Britain and took over the crown. And his right-hand man was a guy called William Bentinck. And when the Dutch courtiers were with the king, and they were seen by the British as invaders, they were all given English titles. And so William was created the first Earl of Portland, which was a title that had died out. And there were a number of other Dutchmen who were given English titles. And his son, the second Earl of Portland, was created Duke. And he was the second Earl, first Duke. This is slightly complicated, bear with me. So that goes all the way down, and they marry into rich families and become Cavendish Bentinck, and then they become Cavendish Bentinck Scott. And it ends up with the last Duke of Portland living at Welbeck Abbey, with estates in Scotland. And his son died tragically, and so the title died out. So then that title went all the way back. From there, back, all the way up to the first Duke, and there were no parallels. There were no cousins that could inherit it. It had to go all the way back past the dukedom, back to the first Earl, and then the first Earl had got a second marriage. He married twice, so we go to his second marriage, and then you come down to the Count Bentinck, and that's us. And so my father inherited the title of Earl of Portland from his something like kind of ninth cousin, but without any kind of, money or estate or anything. It was just the title. But it was a seat in the House of Lords. And the reason why my father, because he had to prove it, it took him 2 years to prove this whole thing with lawyers and everything, and it was expensive, but he wanted to because he was a great environmentalist, and that was his passion. And he foresaw what we're all looking at now, global warming and pollution and all of it. He was a great environmentalist. And he wanted a political platform really for his ideas. He wasn't the kind of person who was going to, work his way up through local council meetings and become an MP. I mean, it just wasn't his bag, but he had this opportunity to do something, and he took it. And so he ended up in the House of Lords, and you can see it. You can see his speech. It was his maiden and only speech, because sadly he got cancer quite shortly after that and died. But it's on YouTube if you just Google Earl of Portland maiden speech, and you can see him telling the House of Lords. Of course, typically there are only about 4 people in. That they should, keep that. What he said was that up until now, mankind, that evolution has happened for the benefit of that we have evolved for the benefit of mankind, and what that is doing is it's doing in the planet. And what we should do now is to evolve on purpose for the benefit of the planet and put the planet's needs before ours, which is a very idealistic and lovely idea, but in the face of the onslaught of capitalism, it is idealistic, and that hasn't happened.
So how should we perceive our unprecedented predicament? Humanity, in common with all life, as we know, obeys a survival instinct. Everything we do is motivated by that instinct. We invented the stone axe and then civilization so as to pursue the best interests of ourselves and our progeny. And it worked. It worked so well that it's upsetting the balance of nature upon which everything depends for survival. Thus, civilization doesn't any longer serve our best interests. It threatens them. And yet we are conditioned to perceive that civilization as normality. To have to perceive normality as wrong because it threatens our survival is what makes it so difficult for us to think how to respond to the present situation. And so all we do, for the most part, is to try to titivate our deadly civilization, hoping to keep it going more or less as it is. This is not, as we know, strictly speaking, a political issue. Since it threatens us and the civilization we have evolved, it is in fact an evolutionary issue, an unprecedented issue, the crux criticorum of our civilization. So how do we face up to it? We know that if we continue to put our best interests in front of those of our environment, we will wreck that environment and kill most of our descendants. If, however, we choose to put the needs of that environment just a little bit in front of our own, not only will it survive, and therefore us too, but we will also have established a new basis for evaluating our way of life, a new basis for thinking out how to do the things that we know have to be done. We will have started to develop new aims, new values, and a new normality, because for the first time we will have started to use our minds to choose to evolve on purpose.
And also he did a speech in Trafalgar Square to words to the same effect. And he said, I put my faith in the young. You know, I think that our generation are too old to do anything about this, but I have great confidence in the young, which was, you know, quite right, but misplaced, because now you've got Greta Thunberg thinking that she's the first one to come up with it. And, you know, I'm listening to her going, you're saying exactly the same thing as my dad said. And you think you're the first one here, and this is going to go on. You know, that self-interest will prevail over the benefit to the planet. So that's how he ended up as 11th Earl of Portland, and then he died, and I inherited a seat in the House of Lords. But I knew that I was going to be thrown out because it was the Blair government, and they'd said that they were going to get rid of most of the hereditaries. And so I knew that I wasn't going to be there for very long. So, and I'm an actor, you know, and acting is a pretty left-wing profession. And I don't really believe that in the idea that an accident of birth should allow you to tell other people what to do. And also, and I didn't want to put my head above the parapet and having people think that I was, you know, I was a rich guy who lived in the country with a Rolls Royce and an estate. Because you say the Earl of Portland, that's what people have preconceptions about, you know. And I get it, you know, I'd think that the same thing. And then they'd think that I wasn't a proper actor, and I am. You know, I've done drama school, done theatre, done everything, all of that, and I need it. I'm you know, that's how I've made a crust to feed the family, and I haven't got a wealth or anything like that. So I was wary and worried about preconceptions. But I've had to live with that without a seat in the House. So I was there for, you know, I had 2.5 years I was there, and I did go, and I observed, you know, as an actor, to see what it was like to educate myself. And it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And then, so for the last 23 years, I've had to live with, you know, thank God, my mates taking the piss. And as long as my mates take the piss, a lesson learned, actually, funnily enough, when I was in Oz, when we'd finished doing this shoot, and we had a kind of an end of shoot party, and everyone got very pissed. And one of the sparks sitting next to me says to me, "So I hear you're a lord." How do you know that? Because I'd been trying to keep it quiet. And it turned out that the producer was a friend of my sister-in-law, and she told her, and she told the whole crew. And I wondered why, because, you know, I'm a good company member. I get on with people. I'd wonder why everyone was a bit off with me. I was thinking, why, you're not being very friendly. I wasn't being asked out, to the pub in the evening and things like that. I was going, what's going on? Oh, this is really weird. Suddenly I thought Australians were friendly and you're all being a bit arsey. What's going on? Anyway, he says to me, everyone knows. I said, well, how? And so he explained. He says, well, mate, you're going to have to make your mind up. You can either be a lord or an actor. You can't be both. Sorry. But that's what he said. And I went, oh, God, and that little line stuck with me. You can either be a lord or an actor. You can't be both. And so, that's the point. So I am. That's who I am. That's what defines me. I'm Tim Bentinck, actor, needs the money. I'm not bloke with Rolls Royce and big country pun and lots of money. So it's about what defines you. And that's why, when I was talking about people saying, oh, you're the Earl of Portland, as I say, as long as people are taking the piss, it's fine.
Well, I'm glad you're an actor. I like the stuff you do, so that's good.
Thank you, mate.
Stick with it.
So what is it that originally led you into the acting profession in the first place?
I think probably my mum. I've got a recording of me and my mum. It's the only thing we've got of me and my mum, and we're doing silly voices. We're doing Pete and Dud, and silly voices and accents and things like that. And we used to do that, and then she died when I was 13, and I just carried on doing that. And we used to do, it's when I was at school, I used to put on comedy sketches. And I've always loved doing accents. I think that's really where it came from. And then when I went to university, I'd done languages at school, and then I went to university and I didn't know what to do. So I just did history of art because I figured I'm going to be in the arts. I'm not going to be a scientist. But I joined the Drama Society day one, and I did plays for 3 years at University of East Anglia. We had a play every term. And at the end of it, I decided I loved it so much, I was then going to go to drama school. So I took a year off and went to America and drove tourists around America twice around America, had some adventures doing that, and then went to Bristol Old Vic Theatre School for 2 years, at the end of which I won this thing called the Carlton Hobbs Award, which is for radio. And 2 people, one guy and one girl, win that every year. And that gives you an equity card and 6 months on the radio repertory company. So I started doing radio, and that got me into the whole voice side of things. So then I got a voice agent. So then I was doing radio commercials, TV commercials, radio plays, lots and lots and lots of radio plays. And then from that, I auditioned for this thing called The Archers, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's the longest running drama series in the world ever. It's now running for 70 years on Radio 4, and it's a sort of British institution. And I play the part of David Archer, who for a while was the kind of head honcho there. But as the years go by, the young get more episodes than, I remember being the young and everyone resenting the fact that us youngsters were getting more episodes than they were, and now that's happening to me, so you've got to take that one on the chin. But and that brings us on to Big Finish. It was about that time doing so much voice work.
The Artist was my grandmother's favourite show that she listened to religiously all her life. Yeah, so Tim, you've been playing David Archer for, I think, over 40 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, 41, yep.
So has this way they record the show changed much over those 40 years?
Not much, no. I mean, apart from the COVID interruption, if it weren't for that, we record it pretty much exactly the same. The main difference that happened was when it went from mono to stereo. Because with mono, you could look directly at your fellow actor. So you had a microphone here, which you could speak into from this side and speak into from that side as well. So you had the microphone between the two of you. So then you got the script, but you were looking up and you could see the other person's face. And there's an old adage that acting is the art of reacting, and it's all about the reality of the interchange that you have between the two of you. And that was more easily done when you could look into the person's eyes. And then when stereo came along, then you had a stereo mic in front of you, and you're both standing on the same side of the microphone, one to the left and one to the right. So there's the stereo field. So, and then the microphone is the other person's ear, but they're standing next to you. So if you turn to them and talk to them like that, you'd be off mic. So you have to keep your head there talking to the microphone, but keep your eyes looking out of there to be able to maintain eye contact, which is sort of slightly artificial. But we all got used to it, get used to it. But apart from that, it's very, very much the same as it was, over the last 70 years. Obviously, the recording process is totally different because it used to be on disc and then it was on tape, and now it's on now it's digital. But apart from that, it's very similar.
Now, I think you've had one of the longest marriages on record, not in real life. I think a real life marriage is good, but in terms of on radio, because your character's been married over 30 years.
Yeah.
So what's the secret of successful marriage on television or radio?
Well, the girl nearly had an affair with the milkman at one point, and so that was a bit of a blow. And, David, my character, has never really got over that. She didn't have an affair with him, but it was only because she rang home as she was about to go and do the deed. And I was telling her about how I'd made spaghetti bolognese for the kids. And as a result of that, she couldn't go through with it. So, the headline is "Spag Bol Saved My Marriage," says David Archer. And he's never really, the way I look at it is that David, he just loves her to bits. He just absolutely adores her. And that was a kick between the legs. And he's never quite been certain about her, and he's terrified. He's terrified that it's going to happen again. That's the way I play it, anyway. But between that, the opposites attract. They're very different. I think that's a good thing. And they work together. They're both farmers, so they work together on the land, and they've got their children, and so their parents together, and that always keeps together. I mean, I've been married to Judy for 41. What am I doing? 41 years, yeah, same thing. And there's, that's a real marriage, and there's different answers to how does the real one survive. It comes down to love, mate. That's what it comes down to. That's good old-fashioned love, I think.
So, are there any really outrageous plots that you remember from the Archers that stand out?
Well, I mean, the one that people remember most is, I don't know, do you listen to it? Do you listen to it?
I have heard a number of episodes.
Okay. Well, there was a point where Nigel Pargeter, I'm up on the roof with him, and he slips and falls and dies.
To his death, yep.
Yeah, so that was poor old Graham Seed, who's a mate of mine, and he was, like we all do, you kind of think this might be a job for life, even if we only get paid per episode, and like for instance, I just haven't done any episodes for 2 months, so I haven't been paid for 2 months. But you do think maybe that it might be you might be playing this to the grave. So it came as a big shock to Graham. And when he fell off the roof, they didn't, and I was there, with him right next to him. Nigel! And he goes, ah! And he'd worked out kind of how high the building was and given the appropriate amount of scream, but they didn't think it was dramatic enough. So in post-production, they lengthened the scream. So it goes, and then some guy worked out that if you do the, meters per second acceleration,
yeah.
It would have been, off the top of Westminster Cathedral. And also, I mean, I josh people, say, I pushed him. There've been many. The flood, there's been relationships, there's been
stampeding cows.
Well, stampeding cows, and also, foot and mouth disease, every disease you can possibly think of for the cattle and everything. So yeah, every cloud has a silver lining. Whenever I hear of some new terrible outbreak of mastitis on the farms, we pretend farmers kind of go, oh, that might be a few episodes then, being so. But no, it's a huge privilege, and isn't it extraordinary how one little thing can change your life? One day I walked in for an audition, and I thought for years that I'd just been brilliant in the audition, but it was only about something like 5 years ago I heard a recording of the guy who played David before me, a guy called Nigel Kourivic. And they said, and this is David Archer, and I was listening going, that was me. And I'm thinking, hang on, wait a minute. That's actually not me. but it sounds very like me. And it was him. And of course, what I realized was the reason I got the job was because my voice sounded like the previous actor, for no reasons about being a good actor or anything like that at all. So that little tiny thing completely changed, my whole life. I've ended up writing an autobiography, and and I've been in this thing that is
icon,
an icon of England. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of the Hancock radio series. Was there an episode where he was in a radio play, and that was sort of Sending Up the Archers? That episode?
Yeah, he was writing the episode, and he was also in it. And it was like, oh look, the whole village has just fallen down that empty mine shaft.
Yeah, that's right.
And he was the only one left.
That's right. Yeah. He got written out and he didn't like it, so he wrote himself back in.
He wrote himself back in and killed the rest of the village. And then there's the killing of Sister George as well, which works on similar lines. So there are, there's all those shenanigans, but they haven't, as far as I know, happened in real life yet.
Do you feel more natural in radio than other types of acting, or are you just a very adaptable actor? Is there a preference that you personally have?
I'd have to say my favorite place to be is in front of the camera, really. I've always done TV, always done films. And I used to be, I remember not getting how to do film acting, because I've been at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, and we were, it was all Shakespeare and Chekhov and, all big. And nobody told me that the camera doesn't lie. You can't do acting in front of a camera. And the moment you start acting, it's nobody believes it. And I look at the stuff I did when I was younger, and I wince with shame. But I figured it out. And because it's all, the whole thing about screen acting is just thinking it. All you've got to do is think it, and the camera will see. And you can't pretend to think it, because the camera will see that you're pretending. It took me a long time to work that one out, so I've got better at it now. And I love it. I love working in film and TV, partly because, and again with theatre, I've sort of, I used to do so much theatre, but I've got to the point now, particularly, I'm just turned 70, man. I mean, I can't believe it. It's like being hit by a freight train. The idea of being 70, oh God. But one of the things is, the last play I did, it was a thing called Brexit, and I was the Prime Minister, and I walk on stage, and for an hour I'm on stage, and there's lots and lots and lots of lines, and it's, you've got to remember it. And basically my memory of that whole thing is all I was trying to do was not dry. It was trying to remember the lines, and the actual performing part of it, I didn't get any real pleasure out of it, because I was just going, oh, don't dry. But my wife said, when I was rehearsing it, she said, I've never seen you so happy for years, and you haven't seen you so happy, because I was creating the part. And that's where I've realized I love doing. I love the creation part of it, which is why I love doing radio, because you just do it, once or twice or three times, which is why I love doing film, because you just do, a few takes, wide, close, blah, blah, blah. And then you move on to the next one. And each time I'm creating, and I love doing improv as well. I do quite a lot of improv. And that's what I love doing. I love the creation, and I don't really anymore get off on the repetition of doing it over and over and over again, and being scared at the same time.
That's something about Big Finish, I guess, is they do things a little bit. Do they do things a little bit differently to other radio? What's the difference between how Big Finish produce things and how The Archers is produced, for instance?
Well, very good question. So the Archers is produced kind of in real time. So you're all in the room together, and you use the acoustic of the room. And they have different acoustics. So you've got a dead room, which is acoustically dead. That's for outside, so you can shout and there's no bounce off the walls. You have a live end, which is like for barns, where there's a bit of an echo, the bounce coming off a big barn. And then you have a small snug place, which is kind of quite quiet, which is sort of for bedrooms and for the living room. And then you've got the kitchen, which has got all the kitchen equipment in it. And all of the sound effects happen live. So you do in the kitchen, there's the kitchen, and you'll have a spot effects person who's making all the noises of the cooking and the fridge and the Aga and all that kind of a thing. And it's three-dimensional. You can walk away from the microphone and use the acoustic of the room to say I'm over here, or I'm over here, and I'm coming in the door. So and it's stereo. So I'm coming in the door from the right, and blah blah blah. That's all live. The way that Big Finish do it is that we all have individual microphones. And one of the studios, there's sort of like 7 booths, there's like telephone boxes next to each other. You can see each other through the glass, but it's acoustically separated from all of them. So you've got 7 different feeds coming into Pro Tools on 7 different tracks, or however many actors there are in the scene. And you're just doing it there with a microphone, like you are there with yours. You've got the microphone just there. And then everything happens in post-production. That's the Big Finish way. So if you're going to be approaching the microphone, it will be done in post-production with the fader. So you'll start you off, down, and then they'll fade it up as you come close to the microphone. The acoustic of wherever you are will be added in afterwards with a plug-in, with a reverb or whatever it is. And then the music gets put on, and all the effects, you can imagine with the Space 1999 and Doctor Who and all those kind of things. I mean, the amount of effects that go on afterwards, we're just literally providing the words, and that becomes part of a technical exercise in creating a soundscape.
Is there more of a sense of a company in something like The Archers, where you're all standing around together, or do you have that sense for Big Finish as well?
Well, you do. But it's different. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've been in the Archers for 40 years, and the people I've known, for 40 years. So in that sense, they are a second family. And so there's a real company feel. And when in the old days, when we were out at Pebble Mill, we were all in the same hotel, and there was a BBC bar. So we'd all have lunch together, and so that it would be all together. It's now a bit more disparate. In that we're in the centre of Birmingham, we're in different hotels, and sometimes old mates will go out and have a bite in the evening. But in that sense of a company, it's closer. But Big Finish, you're still in the green room together. And some people and some people you don't know. But actors are very, they're easy, and we have fun, and have a lot of laughs. And it's and if you're doing Doctor Who, everyone's going, "I'm doing Doctor Who," so there's a bit of that. And then COVID happened, and then we were doing it from home. So for like 2 years, everybody was doing it, either in their bedroom or in their little homemade studio, all on their own microphone with the headphones on.
Were you doing Archers that way too?
We were for a bit, yeah. Yeah, for a bit. I mean, they found it very difficult to be able to do it technically. So what they did for a while was to have monologues in the Archers, where they went into your thinks. So it was like a kind of an internal thinks, which so you revealed what all these characters that you've been listening to all your life were actually thinking, which was a kind of intrusion and weird. And it worked for a bit, but I think everybody agreed it couldn't carry on like that, obviously. And then they got up to the point technically where you could have two-handers. But again, we weren't out on the tractor, we weren't out in the fields, we weren't, walking through the woods or anything. Everything had to be talking heads, because we were just literally in front of a microphone. So that's the way they coped with that. And it went down to 4 episodes a week or I think maybe 3, as opposed to 5. And then when we came back in, we still with the BBC, with the Archers, we still have to do COVID tests every time we come in. And we were separated. So instead of all being around one microphone, we were all on separate microphones, maintaining our social distancing, which again was weird, because, you're meant to be having the intimacy of a conversation where you're talking to somebody who's right next to you. And in fact, they're on the other side of the room. So it was a technical exercise in sounding as though you're next to them, but actually physically not being next to them. The COVID mucked up so much stuff. And I have to say, the fact that I got my studio at home, I did a lot of work, and I earned quite well during COVID. I did 6 audio books from home, and Big Finish stuff, and other video games and all kinds of things. So it was, in some ways it was all right. I mean, we did us voice actors were more insulated against the terror of COVID than, for instance, theatre actors, who that was it. They just didn't work. And not only the actors, but all the support. Everybody who works in the theatre, they were all out of work as well. And TV's sort of carried on. I did a few tellies during it. Everybody with masks and COVID tests and all of that. But yeah,
been a lot slower.
mate. Yeah, really.
So you have done about at least 50 productions for Big Finish across heaps and heaps of different ranges. So not just Doctor Who, you've done Blake's. I think you've done just about everything. Blake 7, Torchwood, Space 1999.
Yep.
You've done everything. What is it that keeps you going back? Is it just the money?
No, the one thing which I think even they will tell you is you don't do Big Finish productions for the money. You do it for the love, and I do love the guys, and I love the productions, and it's one of the sadnesses about being in the Archers was that they kind of don't, the BBC sort of don't use Archers actors for their dramas anymore. So I was used to do loads and loads and loads of radio plays, and that all stopped when I got the Archers, and I missed that. So Big Finish is made up for that in a lot of ways. And also, I get to play character parts. The nature of acting is that it's, I do a lot of kind of short films and student films in which I get to play different people with different voices and different accents and different classes and things like that. But I don't know if you know, I'm Tommy Flowers in Torchwood. It's basically I'm being my mum, and my mum died, but I had these aunties who were very, very camp. It was like being with Alan Bennett, and they call me little Timmy. Hello, Timmy. So I channeled me aunties for Tommy Flowers, and I love playing Tommy. And then I'm Commissioner Simmons in Space 1999, who's complete twat. It's that thing. It's like who I was on that Australian commercial. As the one, because you always know every company there's always one, and if you don't know who the one is, it's you. And that's Commissioner Simmons. He's the one. Oh Christ, here comes Commissioner. I found his first name's Gerald. He's Gerald Simmons.
Of course it is.
Yeah, it would be.
It's interesting you mentioned, was it the play you did called Brexit? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Space 1999, not the one that was just been released this month, but the one from last year, which you would have recorded quite a while ago, at least probably 18 months, 2 years ago, was a Brexit analogy. So that was a really interesting one. Do you recall that? It's only a couple of days' work, but yeah, it was really good. And I think it was in the television series that Simmons died, wasn't it?
Yeah, Simmons died.
But they kept you going for the audios.
Yeah, I was so flattered. They said, because David Richardson said to me, he said, Commissioner Simmons is meant to be dead by now, but he said, we love your the part so much. We've decided to let you live, to keep you on. So he stays on. Yeah, but I know the one that's just come out, because I was listening to it in the car. Where in this parallel world where Simmons becomes the governor Simmons, had these pages and pages of speech, of dialogue, of being in charge of the whole thing. When I first got the script, I didn't realize it was a parallel world. I thought, my God, what's happening here? I'm in charge. And then he gets his comeuppance as he should do. Yes, you're right. There was a kind of a Brexity one. I'm trying like mad now to remember what that one was called or how it worked. But it was a while ago. Yeah, and sometimes you're called last minute and you just provide your lines, and it's only afterwards that you find out what the whole thing was all about when you listen to it. And then David gives you interviews, and you have to do interviews afterwards and everything. And sometimes I have read it all and I know all about it, but sometimes it's all a bit last minute, and I have to busk the interviews slightly. He knows that, so I'm not telling stories out of school.
Do you tend to always listen to your stories after you've done them?
Oh, absolutely. I've got on the bookshelf up here. I've got the CDs of everything I've ever done for Big Finish, because the one thing you get is you get sent the CD, and it's great for the car. It's lovely because we go long journeys in the car. Whacking one of these, it's perfect, absolutely perfect.
Now, I noticed behind you've got some instruments. So not only do you do voice acting, you do television, theatre, movies. You do music as well. Tell us about your interest in music.
Well, I've always played the guitar, and if you go to my website, there's all the recordings I've done over the years. It's timbentinck.com, and I have always basically the thing that motivated me was to, which is my entire life, is to try and find a sideline to acting that will continue to, give me an income once the acting starts to slow down, which I still haven't found, unfortunately. But what I wanted to do is to get the Christmas hit. So I was always writing comedy songs, thinking this is going to be the big Christmas hit and it's going to make me huge amounts of money, like that film about a boy, where what's his name's living on his father had written a Christmas hit and he was just living on that. Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant, thank you. That's what I wanted to be. The guy who had royalties for the rest of his life, and I could put my feet up and not work from one song. That was the plan. So I wrote lots of those. So there's all these comedy hits. I
did see that song today that you wrote for the benefit of Jeremy Clarkson. I thought that was pretty good.
With the film of it.
Yeah, I watched that. It was a good video.
It's a great video. This guy heard it, and I put it up on the website, and he said, do you want to make a film of it? I went, yeah, sure. So I found myself in this freezing cold village hall in Kent for a day with a green screen, and he shot this whole thing, just did playback to me, and I played along to it. And he turns up with this extraordinary film. Still makes me laugh. It's fun.
I had a dream last night. They tried to ban my car. I want to do things right, but now they've gone too far. I want to save the planet and I'm doing what I can. It's just they've got to let me drive my car. My TV's off at night. I've got solar power. I try to do things right. Be greener than you are. I really try not to fly, but I always need to drive my car. I recycle and I sometimes use the bicycle, but please let me drive my car.
And Clarkson has seen it apparently and approves.
And has gone green as a result.
Yeah. Well, who knows?
What's in the future for you? What's to come?
Lots of things, but and in fact, I've got 8 things coming up, which I'm not allowed to tell you about because I've signed NDAs about them all. But there's 8 tellies that are coming up. I've had a bit of disappointment on 2 of them, where I filmed it and it's all been done and that's nice scenes for the show reel, and then they decided to drop the scene. So that was a bit of a blow. But there's a bit more coming up, and I've got a thing that I'm doing next week, which is 2 days on again, a thing that I'm not allowed to tell you about. But I'm very chuffed about. It's only 2 days, but it's a biggie. So that's quite fun. And we're going on holiday in September for a bit. And the Archers, hopefully, even though it's a bit of a fallow period at the moment, will come back. So, life goes on, really. It's the same old. And every now and again, the agent rings, says, will you do a self-tape? And you go off and you do a self-tape. And maybe sort of 50% of those I get, and they're nice, nice parts, and it's the variety, that's the thing that I've had all my life as an actor, is that it's never the same thing twice, and that's the thing I love about it. And so you have the insecurity of it, where you're not earning, like it's at the moment. I've got absolutely nothing on. End of last year, I was trying to juggle the work, trying to get it fitted all in. So you never know, you never know. My father, when I decided to be an actor, he said, I think you're very brave being a freelance. This was a man who'd just been through the war, shot twice and taken prisoner by the Germans. And he was telling me I was brave. I didn't know what on earth he was talking about. And it's only now that I go, yeah, it was a very stupid decision. I should have had a sensible job. I was doing computer programming in the 90s. At one point, I had the highest, most downloaded piece of shareware on this new thing called the internet on CompuServe. And of course I should have become a software developer and I'd now be a multimillionaire. But, Muggins here decides, no, I want to be an actor. Idiot.
You've got to do what you're passionate about.
You got it. Yeah, you have, you have. Although I would have, But the grass is always greener, isn't it? It would be nice to be very, very rich. That's the bit I'm missing.
Not in radio. That's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Not working for Big Finish.
Need to get a Marvel film.
You're telling me? Absolutely. That's what I need. Yeah. Play a rat or something, or a tiger.
Well, if anyone's listening to us now and hasn't seen your show reel, I would recommend anyone go to your website, timbentinck.com, and have a look at your show reel, because you are a very, very versatile actor. I can see why you keep coming back to Big Finish, and long may it continue. That's all I can say.
Oh, thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. I love doing it.
Thank you very much for having a chat with us. Really appreciate it.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
Bad news, Torchwood are going to be destroyed.
From Big Finish Productions, Torchwood 1, Nightmares.
My guest tonight is someone I've wanted on this show for a long, long time, and now we've got her cornered. She's trapped. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make her feel warm and welcome. It's Yvonne Hartman.
Something's wrong with her. The time for sneaking about is over. We're Torchwood. We dive in, get our hands dirty, do what needs to be done, and to hell with the consequences.
Yanto Jones, I'm going to need you to come with us.
Eh? What's this about?
We have orders to detain you.
Me? For what?
Betraying Torchwood.
If you're watching this tape, you have no doubt noticed something is amiss. You need to trust me. It's the only way you'll survive. The only way we will survive.
Ianto, how are you? Marvellous. Listen, I've just woken up in a strange hotel room.
Oh.
I don't know where I am, but I'm lying next to someone. He's dead. Ianto, I think I may have murdered the heir to the throne.
All of Torchwood Who Matters is coming here to die.
And I know who did this.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
It's a goodbye from me, Mary, and a goodbye.
Well, that was a lovely chat with Tim, one of the regulars for Big Finish, and it was lovely to hear some of his stories, Philip.
It was. Lots of stories. He could have kept going for a long time, I know.
Absolutely. He's been in radio in particular for such a long time. Quite legendary, the Archers. I didn't realise your grandmother was a fan.
And I've got lots of family my English relatives who are, everyone always used to listen to the Archers. And my grandmother used to talk about growing up, with the radio on, listening to the Archers every night.
Yeah.
After dinner.
Yep. Very good. Well, that only leaves us to recommend a couple of things. And what I'd like to... Actually, no, I just glanced at the list by my side and it tells me that, Philip, it's your turn to go first.
My turn. Let me go first. I'm going to recommend something that's actually I'm just listening to, and I haven't listened to the last episode yet, but the first three are so worthwhile that even if the last episode's a total dud, which I'm sure it's not, it's worth getting. So I'm listening to The War Master, Solitary Confinement at the moment.
Good cover.
It's a great cover. I mean, it's an amazing cover. Derek Jacobi is just, always has been a major, I've loved him. Like, I knew Derek Jacobi long before he was on Doctor Who. I know him from all sorts of movies. He's been in TV shows. I've always been a huge fan. I've seen him live on stage. And so his voice, and to me, he was just such an amazing master. For the 2 or 3 minutes we had him as the master in Utopia, he was breathtaking. And one of my great regrets is the fact that we didn't have him longer on TV, because he was just so sinister and so evil from being so sweet and so kind. But Big Finish is making up for it with their box sets. And this Solitary Confinement box set does not disappoint in any way. It's a bizarre situation where you really feel for this master. You like him, but then you hate him as well. And he just does things and just turns around. I've listened to the stories by James Goss, Tim Foley, and Alfie Shaw, and the three of them are spectacular but so different. Alfie Shaw, boy, I'm enjoying his stuff. It's the strangest one in some ways, because the master's just a voice in a IA system. But it's really looking at the whole days of IA. But Jacob Dudman is playing the main
Wouldn't
character.
Wouldn't be AI, would it?
AI. Is it, what did I say? AA?
IA.
IA.
That's okay. We know what you mean, Philip. It's all right.
Not AA. Not either.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, AI. So it's basically like a Google box is the character, but with the master's voice. So it doesn't actually do... So Derek Jacobi doesn't do much. Jacob Dudman is the star of that episode. What an amazing young actor he is, because he just carries it. Anyhow, it's scary, it's chilling, it's funny at times. It takes you to places you don't expect to be taken. And I can't wait for the last episode, because there's been a running theme, beginning and end of every episode, which is the master in this mental asylum. The last episode, I'm sure, is going to bring things to a head with that, because it's just been lightly touched. Mainly it's been the stories in between as he tells stories to a nurse. But wow, just, yeah, like one of the best things I've listened to for a long time, and I'm just in.
Is this Scott Hancock's last one?
I think it might be, because now he's off with Doctor Who. I suspect this may be his last one. But I don't know. Who knows what they've got in the can still, because they've got lots of things in the can. I haven't heard it announced that it is his last one. I've not seen anything said that it is, so I don't know. But yeah, it's James Goss always writes. Tim Foley's one is just brilliant, and as I said, Alfie Shaw's, and I'm really looking forward to the last one. I just haven't got to it yet. So that's my recommendation. If you haven't got it yet, it really is a box that's worth getting. I think you'll enjoy it. What about you, Dwayne? What have you been listening to?
Good. I am going to recommend an album, because listening to Rani Takes on the World, the box set, The Last Story, reminded me of this album, because I don't know if you recall, I can't even remember the name of the story off the top of my head. I think it's called The Witching Tree. That's right. Do you remember that one? The Witching Tree?
Yep.
There is an alien in that reads out these seemingly random numbers and names, like 0, 0, 9, 6, and a couple of other funny words. And you find out at the end what all that's about. But instantly, I thought the writer, which was Lizzie Hopley, another awesome writer who does lots and lots of good stuff, might have been thinking about what was in this album that I'm going to recommend. And if it's the same old band that I keep going back to, it's Porcupine Tree, an album from 1997, I think it is, or 98. It's called Stupid Dream, but there's a song on there called Even Less, which at the end of the song, it features someone reading those numbers. And I was always fascinated by that. And what those numbers are on the album is that it's a repeating pattern of numbers that is taken from the recording of a shortwave number station. Now, I'm reading this off some research that I did. It's understood that these stations are used by intelligence agencies to transmit coded messages to overseas operatives, although no government agency has ever acknowledged the existence of these stations or what their actual purpose might be. They're virtually impossible to decode without the key, since the message and its key are generated at random. So that's that. Just that little aspect that I was waiting for the extras for Lizzie to mention something about it, because it's exactly the same as what's on the album. So based on a real thing. And she didn't mention it. So I'd be curious to know whether Lizzie was inspired by that particular phenomenon that no one's been able to decode, because intelligence agencies don't deny their existence.
Well, we should ask her.
I think we should, Philip. So there's that. But what else prompted me to start watching something? There was something, I can't remember what it was, but something we were talking about got me started on a rewatch of Twin Peaks, which is one of my favourite television shows outside of Doctor Who. I think it's one of the most interesting, bizarre, strange shows that there ever is. And it is the music, the theme tune of Twin Peaks that is such an earworm for me. I can just listen to that theme music over and over again. I love it. I love watching the episodes because when I get to the end of one, I know that the theme tune for Twin Peaks is coming on at the start of the next one. So, yeah, I've been doing a little rewatch of Twin Peaks as well. So if anyone hasn't seen it, seek it out, because at least the 90s series, I didn't quite get into the recent one. She's dead,
wrapped in plastic.
Yeah, you had to do it, didn't you?
I had to do it, and I mean, I've got the soundtrack because I love that soundtrack. It's great.
what's his name? Angelo Badalamenti or Badalamenti? I can't remember what his name is. Italian.
I don't know.
Italian.
Yes.
The Italians are great composers, aren't they? So that Stupid Dream by Porcupine Tree, that's my recommendation for this episode. And I thank you very much for your company, Philip. As always, very, very, very colourful background you've got going there.
Words vivid at the moment in Sydney, so I'm just appreciating the beauty of my city. If you're in Sydney at the moment, you can see this.
I'm appreciating the beauty of my state.
Yeah, well, it sums up, doesn't it? You're the nature person, I'm the city person.
That's it. That is it. All right, until next time, Philip, thank you very much, and we'll catch you all later.
Bye, everyone.
This has been the Sirens of Audio episode 159, The Tassie Laddie, with our guest Tim Bentinck and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Original theme composed by Joe Kramer. Our website is sirensofaudio.com. Comment below to let us know what you thought of the episode, or contact us via email at sirensofaudio@gmail.com or via any one of our socials. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll hear you next time.